Hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 126. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. If you listened way back in episode 91, I shared 10 shocking statistics about our stuff. And one of those statistics was that the average American child receives over $6,500 worth of toys before they reach their teens, but 8 out of 10 kids play with 20 toys or fewer. So if your home is filled to the brim with toys, and most of them your kids don't even play with, then today's episode is for you. I am speaking to Lisa Breven, and she is kind of my neighbor here in Northern Virginia. She's a mom of 2, and she is the CEO and owner of The Toy Nest, which is a toy library. And on today's episode, we talk about why she started a toy library. It wasn't her original intent or plan for life. And also the many benefits of borrowing toys, what a toy library is, what it looks like, and how you can find one near you. And also alternative options to borrow toys if you don't have a toy library near you. So I know that you're going to love this conversation with Lisa. Make sure that you definitely have that notebook and pen because she shares a lot of great tips. So what do you say? Let's dive into this conversation with Lisa Breven. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear off some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hey, Lisa, thanks so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am really excited to talk to you today.
I am too. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, so I've known about you kind of tangentially, is that a word? Because my friends have been like, oh, did you know there's this toy library in Northern Virginia? And I was like, what? That's like right up my alley. And then I contacted you. I was actually able to come chat to some of your members, which was amazing. And I knew I wanted to have you on the show because I do not know many people that started companies pre-pandemic for toy libraries. I think you're my only one. So I would love it if you could kind of introduce yourself and tell us about you and your family, kind of how you serve parents, and then in your so much free time, I'm sure you have, what you like to do just for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a mom first and foremost, and that's what led me to start this. My kids are 9 and 12 right now, and I'm originally from Texas, and I studied French in college. So that sort of sets the scene. And I met my husband actually down in Texas, and then ended up going to grad school in France, where we got married, and then we moved back to the States. So that's sort of a bit of background there. I did at grad school study business, and then ended up interning with a retailer in France before I started working back here in the States for a Washington, D.C. based, it was a retail bakery cafe chain. Worked in operations for them at the corporate level and did analytics and sales forecasting and that type of stuff. So I have some experience in the business world and retail, but was clueless about being a mom before that job. That was the hardest job. So yeah, I left work and became a stay-at-home mom, and that was a rude awakening. what can I say about that? I love working, and so staying at home was really hard for me, actually. And I still was never at home. We were always doing things with the kids, and I would take them places, keeping them busy. And I did end up working part-time. I taught jazzercise for about 9 years. Yeah, and started teaching when my youngest was actually, I was pregnant with her, my oldest. I was pregnant with my oldest. So I did that. And then I did lots of gardening around the house when they were taking naps, because I always have to stay busy. And so my kids were very busy. They're very high energy kids. We don't use a lot of screens at our house. Not that we're anti-screen. We do a little TV time every night after dinner, but they don't have phones still at 9 and 12, and they're not going to get one anytime soon. And so it was always a struggle, I think, to come up with ways to help them keep themselves busy. We were always trying to teach them to keep themselves busy in positive ways. And to just be engaged with the world. So whether that meant taking them out to garden with me when one of them stopped napping, to dig for worms, we were just always exploring things. And my house is not very big, and so we were always just going out and doing activities. But keeping things, stocking toys in the house was not really a great option for us. My husband, being from France, is just anti-consumption, I think, in the way that we Americans tend to define it. So his idea of having toys was not what my idea of having toys was. So that was a challenge, but part of what helped me through it was our play-based cooperative preschool that we were a part of. And we ended up becoming a part of that when my oldest was about 3. And we stayed there for 5 years. So the parents actually got to be involved in the classroom. We were the aides, and it was all play-based. It was generally open-ended, and it was wonderful. We got to know their families, but most importantly for me, I got to learn how to play with my kids and best practices, what that looked like, what it looked like to take out a few toys at a time rather than the entire playroom, and how kids engage with fewer toys better. So that was a great learning opportunity. In 5 years, it was wonderful. So a lot of what I do today actually stems from that time period, because I remember what it was like to be, overwhelmed with busy kids and with too much stuff. And I also remember what it was like to have a single income. And so that was always in my mind, and it still is today. So when I thought about this business, how can we serve parents? I designed it for families with a single income, to be able to make it accessible to everybody. That was important. So we are a toy lending library, the Toy Nest, and we do let families borrow toys just like they would borrow books from the book library. So borrowing is a big part of what we do, of course, and we have a full catalog on our website so that if parents are, home with sick kids. I got an email today from a mom whose kids got sick. She had to cancel her play appointment, but they're just going to do a curbside pickup of their toys that they are reserving. So that's something that we offer. It's a big benefit. But the other thing that we offer is that other place to get away and escape the 4 walls when you just feel like the walls are closing in and you've got to get out of your house with your kids. We offer the option to just come to a calm space. And we do limit capacity. So we try to keep it just less stimulating. The music that we play is very intentional. It's not what you might hear elsewhere. We try to just keep it calm. We even have lavender and mint going in our essential oil diffuser, because we're just trying to keep it a calm, relaxing space for parents to connect with their kids. So that having that other place, I think, is really important. My early motherhood years were, the first year especially, and I'll talk more about that, but it was very isolating. And so having a place to go and have some conversation with other people is really important. But when I'm not doing work, I actually do love to play the piano, and I play a lot. Just when my kids are wrapping up homework or something and I have a few extra minutes, I'll just get in and practice. It's something I didn't get to do when they were younger because they would literally climb on me every time. So I'm picking up some old favorites again. And then I like to walk, and we go hiking a lot. I love the outdoors. So I still try to get in the garden when the weather's nice, and cooking, and I read a lot too. So I'm always busy still.
Wow. I love that. And especially just how all of the pieces of your story kind of weave together to what you're doing right now. And I didn't even think about the connection between like the French culture versus American when it comes to play and toys and consumption and everything like that. I find that to be really interesting. And I'm curious, and I want to talk to you. I always ask moms, a time when they were overwhelmed in their motherhood, which could be yesterday or could be however many years ago. But just kind of how maybe your husband's thoughts about toys and consumption and how much to have in the home, because I feel like in American homes, if kids are living there because like almost every room tends to have toys. There are very few rooms that don't have toys in them, and I feel like maybe a French perspective might be very different as far as like what the proper place for kids to have these toys in or the number of toys. But if you could talk a little bit about, that overwhelmed time in your stay-at-home motherhood, because it is a culture shock. I went through the same thing. I went to college, I went to grad school, and I was working in Washington, D.C. It's very like competitive, right? And then I wanted to be a mom. And then when I was a mom, I was like, oh, like, where are my gold stars? Like, where are where are my checklists? Like, where are all these things? And I feel like a lot of times we cope the best we can. And sometimes that is like, I just need to keep these kids busy. And then we end up just bringing, a lot into our homes. So if you could talk a little bit about, a season in your motherhood when you felt really overwhelmed and kind of what that catalyst was for you to make a change, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So it actually is not related to toys. The first year really of my motherhood was just draining and exhausting. And that is the time I think about the most. Having toddlers is hard, but that first year, we were the first actually in our friend group to have kids. And so I did not have a close support system or anybody really to talk with on a daily basis. You have acquaintances who have kids, but that's not the same. And my parents are in Texas and my in-laws are in France. And so we're really on our own here. And it was just very isolating. We were renting a 1-bedroom condo and it was 550 square feet. And so our daughter slept in our room in a crib, and it was just, there were things stuffed in every corner of that condo. It was so tight. And I was so isolated. I was not sleeping well. She was nursing all the time. I felt we were cloth diapering, which we did for both of our kids. So I was washing diapers during diaper. It was just so exhausting. And I didn't have many mom friends or any really. I think I had one. And so I met through an acquaintance of hers. I learned about a group called MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers, and hightailed it to the next MOPS meeting. It was like that next week. It was like, please, I need to get out of here. I've got to find some friends. So I did. And that set me on the right path to just finding what it meant to be a mom for me and a happier place and being surrounded by other moms sort of just going through it at the same time. And that was so restorative and just changed the whole trajectory of my life and my kids and everything else. So yeah, that was, I think, the turning point. And then I would add to that the preschool after, came a few years later, finding more people to surround us with who showed us the right way to engage the kids and help them grow and develop through the next phase.
Yeah, MOPS definitely saved my motherhood. Similar to you, I was like, wait, what? Like they watch my kid and then they feed me? Like, what is this about? And I actually speak to, I think it's called the Mom Co now, but I speak to their groups and everything. And I can just remember that season and just having, like you said, like that community where you can just sort of breathe and talk to other grown-ups for a while. It's just such a blessing. And I love also the cooperative play experience that you had and how, I mean, for 5 years, you really got a sense, like you said, not only about how your kids played and interacted, but also just in general, like trends probably, across the preschool, like how kids are interacting and playing with each other. And so how did you kind of make the leap from, okay, I have kids and I have this experience, and you're like, you know what? I think that a toy library, which most Americans have never heard of before, would be a great business idea. What was the leap for you that really propelled you to start this toy library? I would love to know if it was just kind of more like, I want to start a business, so it was more practical, or if it was more like this conviction that you wanted to share this concept of borrowing versus consumption. So I can't wait to hear the reasons.
I will tell you, I never set out to start a toy library. I always wanted to start a business. And during the stay-at-home mom years, I was always drafting business plans and floating ideas, and I had others. But it wasn't actually until I went on a trip to visit my parents one summer there in Houston, and it was July. I'll never forget because it was 100 degrees. And we were there for 2 weeks in the suburbs with really nothing to do. My parents had saved all my old toys, but I have a son, and so they didn't have anything, like trucks that he is really interested in. And they also didn't have anything to ride on, none of the big toys. So I remember I was like, how do we solve this problem? We could borrow some from the cousin, but their kids aren't the same ages, and it was just a really big problem for 2 weeks. And so we said, well, let's go to Goodwill. And we did. And there were just like 2 toys and they were broken. And it was so sad. And so that sort of led me on the path to thinking we could do better, and then we got back from that trip, and it all came back to me all these times we'd gone on play dates to friends' houses, and they just had overstuffed cabinets and closets full of toys that their kids never wanted to play with, but my kids always did. And it occurred to me that, the best toy is not your toy at all. It's a toy that you get to use. It's, special, and then you can give it back. And that wouldn't that solve the same problem that, the grandparents would have hosting grandkids? And so that I didn't even know that was called a toy library, borrowing toys or renting toys. I thought I had this crazy idea, and I mentioned it to a few people, and they're like, that's kind of weird. I don't know if people would go for that, And so I was very uncertain. And I just Googled toy library just to see if that could be a thing. And I was shocked because there's actually a USA Toy Library Association. There's an International Toy Library Association. And it is a thing. It's a big thing, especially in Australia and other countries. And I thought, I'm not crazy. That was the first thing. I'm not crazy. This is a good idea. I could make this work. But what I learned is that most of the toy libraries in the US are really run on a small scale, or they're run through existing book libraries. And so they operate with, 4 to 10 hours a week of work, and it's volunteer based. And most of them are not in places where you'd want to hang out and spend time. You just go to pick out your toys and you leave, that kind of thing. The ones in Australia, from what I've seen, tend to be more stay and play. So I thought, well, what if we could tweak it and charge a little bit more and make it a place where people would want to stay and play, and we could do birthday parties. And I learned about the one in Austin, Texas, that does just that. And so I was inspired by her. And along the way, I ended up spending a day with her, with Liza, down in Austin at the Toybrary to see how she runs things. And that was a big informing factor in how I set up my own.
Wow, that's really fascinating because before I found out about the Toy Nest, I didn't even know. I had heard about like libraries, book libraries, that they had that option. Also, since I've been on this like minimalism path for almost a decade, I'd heard of tool libraries and some other things, but it did seem, like you said, like pretty small scale. And then I found out about the US Toy Association or Toy Library Association. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool. And I am curious. So, because you signed the lease in November 2019, right? Smack dab before COVID, of course. Oh, goodness. And once you were able to kind of get over that hurdle and actually have more of the stay and play aspect in in the toy library, were you noticing like the benefits for the kids, like in how they were playing? Were you hearing from parents like, oh, this is so nice, I don't have to have so much in my house? Like, I'm curious, as you started to do this on your own, like what were you noticing about the kids that were participating, as well as like the benefits that the parents noticed?
Great question. Gosh, so many benefits. One thing sticks out to me, I'll never forget. A mom who had 3 girls at the time. Now she has a 4th, and it happens to be a boy. She said, I love the Toy Nest because you let my girls play with things that they would never otherwise be gifted. So people, you don't think about it, people don't give girls, I don't know, building sets, or Legos a lot of times. It just shocked me to hear her say that, but it was true in her case. And so her girls have been exposed to every type of toy now, and they've developed wonderful different interests because of the exposure they've had. So that really touched me, and that's just one. But what I hear commonly is that families really never have to buy another toy again, or they will try toys that they're considering buying, maybe making a long-term purchase, and they'll try it with us, and then they'll end up buying, the forever toy that they want to keep. But they don't have to make so many uninformed decisions and just guess that their child is going to like something. They can actually test it. So that's a common one. They also like to just come and play and spend time. We'll host lots of play dates. Moms will just meet up informally or formally, and just to escape the house and really be able to focus on their kids, rather than the laundry piles or the dishwasher and all the things that are beckoning to us when we're in our homes. It can be kind of stressful, and so having a place that's really dedicated to connecting with your kids is really important. But more in general, the research on play is pretty clear that kids, and you probably know this, that kids engage on a deeper level and much better with toys when there are fewer toys just present in the environment. So when we can pull toys out of the home and have less there, the kids will play much better with the fewer toys that they do have. And that has long-term implications, for kids' development, that they're really exploring all kinds of things, physics and the science of how the toy might work, or engaging their brain in creative play in ways that they wouldn't if they just had overstuffed homes and closets. Let's see, some other things I hear from parents a lot is the kids learning to share because they realize that the toy doesn't belong to them, so they have to give it back. And that in turn helps them to remember that they have to take care of it. And, they're learning respect of property, which is huge at such a young age. If we can instill that, wow, that's a great value. And another thing that they're learning is how to spend their quote unquote money or their points. We work on a point system, so families can check out a certain number of toys based on their membership level. And so kids will come in and mom will say, you have 2 points to use, your brother has 2 and I have 1, and go pick out a 2-point toy, or you can pick 2 1-point toys. And so they're using math skills, and they're also using budgeting skills at a young age. It's incredible to see it, and they're able to do it. So that makes me happy. But the less clutter at home and saving money on toys, those are just, you can't really find that anywhere else. So there's so many positives of sharing toys, using the toy library, and the planet too. We're not consuming the plastic or creating the plastic waste. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah. And especially for the big, you were mentioning kind of like the big toys and everything, to be able to borrow that and then give it back. So it's not taking up space. I was telling you about my boys, the Hot Wheels, how they had the Ultimate Garage and they have the Gator Wash. And I'm like, as soon as Sean's done with that Gator Wash, it is yours, Lisa. Because it takes up this huge amount of space, right? But then just if it's for like a temporary time, like a couple weeks or a week or whatever, it's like, okay, well, I can deal with this huge thing in my house for like a week because I know that it's going back. But I love, the benefits. And when you're talking about the community aspect, which is so incredibly important, because not only you're out of the house, because I'm the same way, like working at home sometimes is hard because I have all these things beckoning to me, like the laundry and the chores and whatever. But you're out of the house, you're out of those 4 walls that might be kind of closing in on you, depending on the season of motherhood that you're in. But then you're really building that community with the other families that are part of the library, which is great. And I'm curious because obviously people can go on the website for the US or the International Toy Library Association, which I'll link in the show notes. But if they're like, well, there's not really a toy library near me, and I don't think I have the capacity to really be like Lisa and start one myself, do you have any ideas of how we can have kind of like that toy library mentality maybe, and just kind of do something slightly different as far as like being able to enjoy some of these benefits without starting a toy library of our own? I'm just curious because I feel like a lot of people were like, oh, well, that's nice for you all because you're in the DC metro area, but I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. Like, what am I supposed to do? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. Really good question. So I would first and foremost urge people to purge their toys and classify them into categories. And you might be the expert on how best to declutter toys, but I think classifying into general categories like building, pretend play, music, and then keeping the top hits, the most open-ended. I'm a big fan of open-ended. And what I mean by that is the toy can be played with in many different ways. So with open-ended toys, kids can do more, but rotating the toys that you have. So purging what's not being used, what's broken, what's developmentally inappropriate at the phase in your kids' lives, and then rotating what you keep. So that's one way, but it requires that you take the time and you have the space to rotate, which I never did. So what I enjoyed about MOPS actually was we had swap meets. And it was MOP swap day, and we'd bring our stuff and swap it. So that is totally something you could do. If you have just a small group of friends, you could swap your toys. And then another option that is very popular is the buy nothing movement. And you do have to keep the toy, you keep it, but you can always give it back. So if you see something that you're really interested in, that's another option. And more book libraries are offering toy play as well. A lot of them don't do take home play like we do, but at least that's a space where you could get out and play, and connect with your community in a public space.
Those are all great ideas. And I kind of forgot I do use Buy Nothing groups a lot. And I have used it as an adult actually, it was for a MOPS meeting. We needed a chocolate fountain. We were going to use a chocolate fountain for this like Valentine's Day thing. And the first inclination was like, let's go on Amazon and let's get a chocolate fountain for $30 or whatever. I'm like, hold up, let's go to Buy Nothing. Let's just see out of the 2,000 people, if someone has a chocolate fountain, someone did. So I've like borrowed, from that perspective, but I never thought about doing it from like a toy perspective. And I think that's great because especially for Buy Nothing or your local MOPS group or whatever, it's a contained community of people that live close to you. So it's easy to kind of do that toy exchange. Those are all really amazing ideas. And I just really am in awe of you. Ever since I've gotten to know you, I'm like, wow, because I had an idea of doing this with like baby stuff, like being able to swap baby things. But I feel like when you're in the newborn haze, it's really hard to have that business mindset to be able to do it. But I just love that you were able to take this need that you saw and be able to turn it into a business. And now you're just really blessing so many families with what you do. So I really appreciate you coming to talk to us about how toy libraries work and a little bit about your story. And would love if you could tell us where everyone can connect with you if they want to learn more, if they're curious about the Toy Nest and how you kind of do things, because your website is very impressive and it has the catalog on there and kind of the, how to do it. So yeah, tell us how we can connect with you.
So I'll start with the website. We are on the web. We are at thetoynest.com. And yes, I love our web designers. They did a great job. They're called Lincoln Layers, just in case. But we are also on Instagram at The Toy Nest. And then we're on Facebook at thetoynest.toylibrary. And then you guys can also email us as well. We respond to email.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Lisa, for coming on the show. This was really helpful, and we'll link to all of those great things in the show notes. So thank you again for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you so much. This was great.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama. You're overwhelmed, in fact, but 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words. They'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.